Dr. Corsi, it's beginning to feel a bit like that movie Groundhog Day in Washington, D.C., because we wake up and every day it's the same bit of nonsense in Congress. How are you, Doctor?
Oh, I'm great. So you're talking about the Schiff show, right?
Exactly, the Schiff show. It's on full display. You know, Doctor, I was thinking before we began and before we get into it today, it occurred to me that, you know, people have not yet
wait a second.
Oh, yeah. Is your simulcast going?
Yeah, it was going. I stopped it. Go ahead.
People have not yet fully realized or appreciated, perhaps, the importance of the role that you've played, Doctor, in dismantling. I mean, we've spoken about it many times, of course, but I just wanted to tell you, Dr. Corsi, I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking about the story that you've told so many times, how you woke up in the morning and Mrs. Corsi said to you that she doesn't want you to lie and she wants to have you stay the man you were when she married you. That was such a brave statement of her. And I just wanted to say, Dr. Corsi, I'm just proud to know you and Mrs. Corsi, and I'm so happy for both of you. She's such a strong woman and an excellent wife, and I don't know where we would all be if you hadn't done that.
Well, I've been married to Monica now for 28 years, and it's been looking forward to 28 more.
Absolutely,
and you know, she very strong woman, very strong morals, very strong principles, right and wrong, and largely those were qualities in her I admired when I married her, and she has not changed. It's you know, you're faced with the government who uses this massive power to intimidate you to get what they want, but in the final analysis, when I thought about standing in front of a federal judge and swearing I'd committed a crime that I hadn't committed, the government writes out this allocution, which you're supposed to read to a judge. I'd get about 2 sentences into it. I'd say, Judge, this is nonsense. I didn't do this. It's ridiculous. I'm not going to swear to this. And so I knew I couldn't do it. But, you know, it's a family decision. You know, they're going to try to prosecute you for 35 years sentence on conspiracy to obstruct justice if you don't agree to this one little process crime, and they promise you won't go to prison. It's just, you know, that kind of. I looked at these prosecutors as they were the criminals, because they were trying to get me to suborn perjury, to connect that I connected with Assange, which I didn't, and then connected Roger. That was their whole collusion theory. And when they couldn't break me, their theory fell apart.
Exactly.
I think that was the issue that broke Mueller's entire predetermined prosecutorial theory. You know, legitimate prosecution. You investigate the facts and find out if a crime was committed. Here they started with the presumption that a crime was committed. Then they looked for the facts that they thought would prove it. Yeah. And when I wouldn't give them, because it wasn't true, this critical link to Assange, they pressured me enormously in order to just say, you lied to us and you won't have to go to prison. I said, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And Monica's resolve was critical because, you know, you could lose the family home, you could spend millions of dollars, and go to prison.
Right.
I mean, these things are big decisions that you have to make in conjunction with the family.
Absolutely.
And we had to resolve together to fight this, and we did. And thank God it turned out the way it did. And you know, my heart goes out, especially General Flynn right now, who I think should have fought it. Although I don't. Everybody's circumstances is different, and I'm not going to prejudge his circumstances. Yeah. I'm just very pleased that he has Sidney Powell representing him, and I'm praying that he gets his case thrown out of court by Judge Sullivan. I think that's what should happen if justice is done.
Yeah. And hopefully that will happen very soon, Doctor. It's, you know, when you speak about it, I really feel the impact that it was having on your psyche, your family. I mean, you know, you've worked your entire life to achieve the status that you're at, and it's a difficult decision for any wife. So I'm just really pleased that it worked out in your favor. And I do feel that things are turning, but it's a big ship. We've got this impeachment thing happening, and Adam Schiff is just really driving hard to the hoop. When you mention that elocution, I'm caused to recall that Adam Schiff once wanted to be a screenwriter, and he wrote a screenplay about a minotaur, which you probably know much more than I do. It's a mythical beast that like eats children and does blood sacrifices and pretty weird stuff.
Well, you look at Adam Schiff, and I mean, just looking at him, I used to watch with my dad late night television. I was a truant from school. I hardly would go throughout elementary school, and we would set up and watch Jack Parr, and we would watch the Steve Allen show. And Steve Allen one day said that there were two people in the 50s. He could say, you look at them, and you know that they've got a psychosis. And he said one was Jack Parr, and the other was Richard Nixon. Mm. So I'll tell you two quick stories here. It's kind of diversion, but it is what my analysis of Schiff is. He said, Jack Parr was interviewing one day on his show James Mason, who was a very famous British actor, very distinguished gentleman, and he was in his home. Jack Parr, always uncomfortable. He never felt comfortable with himself. And so here's Mason, he's got his smoking jacket on in the fire, and he's got his brandy and at home, and his mother's sitting there. And so Jack Parr, completely inappropriately, very typical of Jack Parr, he said, oh, this is your mother? And yes, he said, yes, that's my mother. Parr said, do you like her? And James Mason said, well, not particularly. And it was a horrible, awkward moment. And then the Richard Nixon moment that I remember is 1972. I was down in Miami Beach for the Republican and Democratic National Conventions. It's when Nixon was renominated and George McGovern was nominated as an anti-war candidate. The Democrats are going to repeat that this year. McGovern won one state. At any rate, so I was doing a law enforcement assistance administration grant on the protests. I was working for the Lindbergh Center to Study of Violence. I had just gotten my PhD. I was about 25 years old. And I'm on the tarmac here with all the reporters and the pro-Nixon people, the Nixon youth, and they're waiting for Nixon to arrive. Well, Air Force One arrives in Miami, and it pulls onto the tarmac, and it comes up to all these people, and then Nixon does the Hitler routine. They don't open the door right away. So everybody's waiting in anticipation. Then suddenly the door cracks open, and Richard Nixon comes out, and I'll never forget it. The band strikes up Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh.
And Nixon comes out and does the V symbol with both hands. And I'm saying, what did I just get into? I mean, they're defaming Jesus Christ, and Nixon's going to be Jesus Christ Superstar with the V signal. And Watergate had already happened.
Oh, wow. Okay?
And I'd been following this guy. I thought this guy was about bats in his belfry since I'd first seen him as a kid. I thought this guy was so nutty, so paranoid, just like Jack Parr. Well, it's the same deal. I mean, I can't figure out with Adam Schiff if that's, a result of meth that he looks the way he does, too much meth with Ed Buck down in, at the Standard Hotel down in West Hollywood. Ed Buck being the guy now in prison for meth and sex parties with young black males, and Schiff some 16 times in Ed Buck's apartment, recorded. And so I'm waiting for the FBI to knock on his door. Various of the posters in my CorsiNation.com podcast are saying Schiff looks like this from meth. The bug eyes and the the scared rabbit look. All allegedly. I can't prove any of that.
Yes.
FBI might be able to, but I mean, I'm just saying, the things that occur to me when I look at Schiff is the same thing with Jack Parr, Richard Nixon. This guy's got psychological problems. I don't know what they are. I have no idea. But I look at those eyes and what's going on in the mind behind it, and you can't tell for sure. But with all this training I had fighting terrorists with some of the best psychiatrists in the world, I'll guarantee you there's bats in that belfry behind those eyes. They're flying around and they're competing with his attention, and weird things are happening in the brain. I mean, he makes up. But the thing about the Schiff hearings, first of all, I think they're absolutely collapsing on the Democrats. And we'll get into that when we do the full broadcast today. But based on hearsay, you're going nowhere. And increasingly, the Democrats have gone off the cliff. They've just driven the car right off the cliff, headed towards socialism and communism. And this looks like to me a Stalin trial. I mean, let's look at the premises of these. first of all, you're guilty because you were accused. Okay,
Right.
so we're gonna guilty, but we'll hold a trial. Yeah, right. Now the trial, by the way, you don't get to have a lawyer, and you can't call any witnesses. And one of the premises is that hearsay's okay. But you see that one of the Democrats yesterday was actually saying,
Wow.
hearsay's okay. I mean, this is triple, quadruple. This guy said this guy to this guy, who said it to that guy, who said it to this guy, and told me, and so therefore I concluded that. Yeah, well, that's like that's water
Taylor,
cooler
right?
gossip. Yeah, water cooler gossip in the office. I mean, this is telephone, the game we played as children.
Right.
And so that okay, but there's another rule that trumps even that one. So hearsay's okay, but if the hearsay fails, then you can just make it up.
Wow.
Because that's what Schiff did. He said, "Let me tell you what Donald Trump really meant to say, because I know what he meant to say." Yeah, right. Well, you know what he meant to say. That's good. What are you, a mind reader? Right. But another rule of evidence under the new Schiff Stalin trial system is hearsay is okay. If hearsay fails, just make it up. And its corollary is we don't need no stinking facts. We don't need no stinking proof. We don't need no stinking evidence. We just need our lying witnesses, and you're not allowed to ask them enough questions to know if they're lying.
Yeah.
And then in walk these two characters, William Taylor and this other guy whose name I keep forgetting, George Kent. George Kent looks to me like he looks like he should be played by Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage looking for Arizona,
Raising Arizona, right?
Cage,
yeah.
Raising Arizona act, or the what he did in Moonstruck, where he played.
Man is also another one. He's a little wacky in that.
Man. He's always wacky, His arm got whacked off in the bread slicer. He's mad at his brother, but they resolve it by taking Cher to see La Boheme at the Metropolitan. It's actually a great movie. The Italian spoken in it is very nice, very good. At any rate, the point is these characters are wacky, and then you get these two State Department guys coming in. First of all, they're central casting, So you get George Kent. He comes in with his yellow bow tie. That was a nice effect. And a suit with a three-piece suit with a vest. I swear he bought in 1950 or maybe 1947. Some post-war story got that. And the other guy, Taylor, comes in and he's got these little funny granny glasses with this bow that go out the side of his head. And I'm saying these guys belong in a Georgetown coffee shop or in a seminar talking Diplo speak. And when it gets down to it, that guy, look at the guy.
He looks like a Batman villain, Dr. Corsi.
I'll tell you, but no, look, he's got the J-Press suit. He's got the J-Press tie. He's got the J-Press collar. This guy is State Department central casting.
Yeah.
And he speaks Diplomo speak,
Right.
They invent words. They say that, they have a whole theory of how they see the world, and EU and NATO, and we're going to support Ukraine, but we want to go to war with Russia, and we're going to support Poroshenko. We're going to have a little revolution that Soros is going to fund in 2014. We're going to put our Nazi guy in. Here comes Poroshenko, and he is actually from the neo-Nazi faction, got a Nazi party with a swastika supporting him in the streets during this uprising in 2014.
Wow.
And our ambassadors are in the middle of it, engineering the whole thing and reporting back to Obama. And so they, it gets down to it. And what Kent and Taylor say is that Trump is bad. He needs to be impeached because he disrupted the interagency agreement on the State Department and the NSC and all, as to how Ukraine policy ought, and it was going swimmingly, except that Trump interfered. Well, it was going swimmingly because they wanted Ukraine to go into NATO, into the EU. Soros had a plan to come in, get it financed. He was going to make millions of dollars ripping off companies. like he has in every one of the other orange revolutions that he architected and funded in Ukraine in 2004. You know, this whole thing is an act, and nobody, I don't remember, I guess I missed the paragraph in the Constitution where the State Department is in charge of foreign policy or even mentioned.
Yeah.
And
it's very troubling, Doctor.
Well, my solution is pretty simple. Look, there's nothing in the Constitution that even talks about the State Department. We don't have to have one. And we certainly don't have to have it in Washington. Yeah. So my solution, all these guys, SES, listen to them. They're talking about their State Department careers back to George Washington and the founding of the Republic and how that applies to Ukraine. The average person doesn't even know where Ukraine is or what its history is.
Exactly.
So look, okay, so my solution is I want to move the State Department to the Aleutian Islands and see how many of these guys want to relocate. You know, they've got their own speak. Instead of Kiev, these guys think that Kiev is a chicken dish you serve in a Georgetown 5-star restaurant that they like to frequent. But they say Kev. It's Kev now, you know, Kev.
Yeah.
I thought Kev was his nickname for a kid named Kevin. So, okay. If we ship all these departments out of Washington, it's the only way to break up this deep state bureaucracy. I want to move. I'm serious. I want to move the Department of Justice and the FBI to Death Valley. I want to move the IRS to McAllen, Texas. And fry eggs in the street in the summer. And I want to move the EPA to Dalhart, Texas, in the Panhandle next to the feedlots. And let's see how many. And by the way, this idea is catching on. The Interior Department is just moving people. The departments are moving out of Washington. I've been at this idea now for months, and I'm seeing that there's legislation being introduced. Marsha Blackburn has just introduced legislation. I've started it out not as a joke, but as the only way I could see to break up the bureaucracy. But GOP Senator Hawley, Missouri, and Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee have introduced legislation. They will move agriculture to Missouri, education to Tennessee, commerce to Pennsylvania, energy to Kentucky, HHS to Indiana, HUD to Ohio, Interior to New Mexico, labor to West Virginia, transportation to Michigan, and Veterans Affairs to South Carolina. I'm all for it.
That makes sense. So it's not all concentrated in one city where the same people know each other and the same law firms can sort of jam up people to get things done. That's very interesting, Dr. Corsi. Now, we're just about out of time on our YouTube preview show here. And each week, Doctor, we've been doing this Patreon-only sponsor-exclusive show that people can see in just about 12 minutes on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I hope that people will join us there, but I do also want to remind everyone that your new book, Dr. Corsi, Coup d'etat, that's going to talk all about how Barack Obama's administration planned and executed the coup that we're witnessing right now, and people are going to want to pick that up. I think you can pre-order it right now. Isn't that correct, Doctor?
Yes, thank you. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble right now.com in pre-publication sales. And what I do is, I apply, as I say, I worked with, was trained by the psychiatrist, worked with terrorists, did that for years under contract, again working for, not working for the Department of State, but under contract. I did it for years, trained by the best psychiatrists. So I know the criminal mentality. My father once said, well, you were born with the criminal mentality. And I said to him, yeah, where do you think I got it? At any rate, when you apply a criminal mentality to all these things, you can see how, in fact, this coup was engineered, how it was international intelligence, how the FBI maneuvered to get into the intelligence business, how they got Italian intelligence, how it started with British intelligence, how they were setting up people like Papadopoulos and Carter Page. The whole thing was a criminal enterprise. And if you read my book, which is coming out, I'm this weekend doing the final proofreading of it. It has to be in on Monday. And we will get that out there. I think it's going to be a book that people will want to read. Coup d'etat, and the subtitle is Exposing the Deep State Traitors and the Plan to Re-elect Donald Trump. And that should be out early next year.
Well, now, Doctor, they've changed it so it says March 3rd. Before it said like January something.
Well, we're trying to figure out the public. First of all, it's hard these days. The printers, there's fewer printers. So it's actually hard to get a print date. And we're trying to figure out, timing as best we can,
right,
and what's going to happen in the sequence of things. It's going to come out when the primaries are on. And I think, I've said when I wrote the coup d'etat, and also when I wrote in 2018, Killing the Deep State, it was a New York Times bestseller, I said there will be 3 phases. Number 1, I wrote this in 2017 when I wrote that book, that number 1, Mueller would fail. Now Mueller's failed. I said number 2, Trump will begin a counterattack, and there will be indictments. And I think the failure, the collapse of the Schiff impeachment hearings is part of the counterattack, and it's going to collapse very quickly, I'm predicting, and it will ultimately expose Soros. We'll talk about that on the Patreon channel as the puppet master behind a lot of this. And the third phase, which I think we're going to go through this Trump counterattack all the way until the November election. In the November election 2020, I think the third phase will come in, and people will truly realize that it was a coup d'etat. My book's designed to advance that. And traitors number 1 and number 2 were Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be clearly established. People are going to be ready to accept that. Today, people aren't ready to accept that. But today, now having seen Russiagate be repeated in Ukrainegate, and Ukrainegate is not going to take 3 years. It's going to take about 3 weeks to collapse. The American people are catching on to the deep state. All you've got to do is watch as many hours as we're going to see of William Taylor, George Kent, Marie Yovanovitch, and all these other State Department types that we're going to have paraded in front of us who think that they were in charge of foreign policy, and the president had meddled by deciding he wanted his own policy in Ukraine under Article 2. How dare Donald Trump do that? He needs to be impeached. American people see enough of this, they're going to catch on to that this was a coup d'etat, and Trump's counterattack is going to end up in indictments that Durham is going to bring. I think we'll be disappointed that there aren't going to be more indictments, and there will be, but I don't think that Barr can restore trust at this point in the Department of Justice unless there are indictments. And I'm expecting the next Horowitz report, which we're now being told will come out before Thanksgiving, I hope it does, to be very, very damaging to the Democrats and advancing the idea in the American public's mind that there is evidence here of a coup d'etat for the first time really in American history.
Well, we'll discuss that. People might argue, and I think you would agree, that there was a violent coup d'etat with JFK, but we digress. Doctor, we're going to close out the preview broadcast, and people will be able
I would agree with that, by the way, and I would say this one actually started there.
Yeah, I agree completely. This is the silent coup, but it's getting louder. Doctor, I'll see you in just 7 minutes on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We've got several hundred people watching on Crowdsource the Truth channels, and of course, we have the simulcast on the Jerome Corsi YouTube channel, so people can use Super Chat to support the doctor. You can go to CorsiNation.com, and you can see his daily news decodes and also access all of the latest updates and the payment links that the doctor has posted there. So, Dr. Corsi, I'll see you in just 5 minutes, and we'll see everybody there.
Look forward to it, Jason. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Doctor, and thanks everybody for watching.